Hi everyone, thank you for joining me today and welcome to this Exposure Ninja Law Firm Marketing Masterclass on increasing your client cases. And that's the point that I really want to begin on, right? I want to unpack that a little bit because increase is a kind of abstract term, right? What do we mean when we say increase? Do we mean getting 10 new cases, 200 new cases, 500 new cases? Well, today I'm going to show you the strategy behind how we increased new case leads to over 2,900 in 1 year. Now, I do want to put that into context because 2,900 from a number like 2,500 might not seem all that impressive. So the year before this, we achieved 357 leads, so it's a pretty sizable jump. So with that context, you might be thinking one of two things. You might be wondering how we did it, or you might even be thinking, yeah, okay, either we were doing something really wrong before, or we're measuring some kind of vanity metric that isn't really representative of actual cases. And of course, not every single lead is going to convert into a qualified case, and there are several different factors at play here, including your own conversion rate, and by that I mean how many qualified leads you're actually converting into clients who choose you to represent them. And then once you land a client, there are lots of other factors at play that determine that case's value. And these might vary based on the type of law you practice. So just to use an example, if you're working in personal injury, the value of each case is going to vary massively depending on the severity of a client's injuries and their losses, who's liable, how negotiations go with insurance companies, and so on. And that's why these numbers can seem a little bit wishy-washy, right? Because without tracking each lead across the entire life cycle of a case, which might take several months or even years, and without knowing exactly how much revenue each lead brings in during that time, which if it's a private settlement or it's confidential information isn't necessarily information that we're privy to, it can be difficult for us to accurately report on these findings. But we can do the next best thing, and that's track how many conversions are taking place from organic search, and by that we mean from search engines, and also through conversations with our clients to measure how many of those represent potential clients with a case. So in this webinar, I'm going to show you how we achieve these results, and more importantly, how you can replicate them for your own firm or for your client's firm if you're working with legal clients. So first, I'm going to run through some of the common legal challenges facing firms when it comes to marketing. Then we'll explore how you can combat these by giving you a bird's eye view of one of our top performing legal campaigns, including the results and some of the various strategies and tactics that we've implemented. And this will present you with a complete picture of one single campaign. So we're not cherry picking bits and pieces from multiple campaigns and sort of cobbling them together to make it look like one uber successful campaign. Then I'll go over some of the top search engine optimization strategies for law firms, and this is really going to be the bulk of the masterclass because this is where we get into the practicalities of how can I achieve this, what do I need to do to increase the number of clients signing on the dotted line. Then I'll run through some key mistakes to avoid, and these are comparatively little things from the bigger picture strategy stuff we'll go over, but they can derail your efforts if you don't watch out for them. So you'll know what to keep an eye out for so that you can catch these early or prevent them from happening in the first place. So if I do my job properly today, you'll walk away with a solid understanding of not just what goes into creating a successful SEO campaign within this super competitive landscape, but you'll also have a roadmap of how to navigate it yourself. Okay, so before we get into what to do and how to do it, we first need to know what we're dealing with, right? And the current legal marketing landscape looks a little bit like this. So if your firm is the one person right in the middle here, you have all of these other firms surrounding you. And the online space for law firms has always been competitive, but the competition is always ramping up further. Now, when we consider some of the common challenges that are facing firms when it comes to digital marketing, we can place them into several different buckets. And really the overarching theme is that the search results are becoming increasingly crowded. And so in this first bucket, we have search engine algorithm updates. Over the past few months alone, Google's updated its algorithm several times, and it will do this multiple times throughout the year. Most recently, we had a core update, which was quite a large change that saw a lot of websites, and not just within the legal sector, but really across the web as a whole, lose significant rankings and website traffic. Then before that, we had a spam update aimed at improving the quality of content ranking at the top of the search results. And we also saw the more widespread introduction of AI overviews, which I'll talk about shortly. Then in the second bucket, we have the various features appearing in the search results. So for local searches like defence attorney in Orlando or personal injury lawyer in South Carolina or probate lawyer in Cambridge, there's a significant chance that the map pack will appear, and that looks like this. For many searches, you'll also see sponsored results, which means that a firm is paying per click to claim that top positioning and benefit from that visibility in the search results. We have the search generative experience, and this is those AI overviews that I just mentioned. So these are AI generated snippets comprised of various sources, and as you can see, they take up a significant portion of the search results real estate. Featured snippets can also appear. These take up more space than the traditional organic results, and they display a snippet from the page itself. And then we also have the traditional organic results. So one of the big questions becomes, what should you focus on? Do you try to claim the top organic result and optimise your content to claim AI overviews and rank top of the map pack and invest in PPC, which can be effective but also yields a very high cost per click? Is it even possible to achieve all of those things? Or do you focus on one important channel at the risk of, for example, paid competitors outbidding you, or the results being volatile after an algorithm update, or even Google experimenting with the layout and structure of the search engine results page to move around or even remove features like map packs and AI overviews, which we have seen happen? Now, you'll also notice that I've overlapped realisation lockup here, because while it's not necessarily a marketing specific challenge, it may be something that you have to consider and that can impact your approach to marketing. So realisation lockup is the work in progress, right? The unbilled revenue that's incurred while working on cases. So this isn't going to be a factor for every firm, but for those that accept payment at regular intervals or work on contingency rather than requesting payment up front, realisation lockup can target cash flow. And this can obviously affect your marketing efforts, because digital marketing needs to be a long-term and consistent investment to be successful, especially in such a competitive space. And so this means that marketing needs to be treated just as any other critical business expense, just as you make sure that you'd have the resources to pay for court transcripts or reports or for an expert's time. And without factoring this in, you might not have the cash flow to invest in your firm's marketing, whether you're paying for a service and having it done for you, or you're employing someone within your firm, you might even be that person, or even if you're investing your own time, which has its own valuable cost because that is time that you could be spending on billable client work. And then in this final bucket, we have challenges related to positioning and standing out. So there may be jurisdictional restrictions, for example, on how you can advertise. You might not be able to claim expertise unless you are certified by a state board of legal specialisation. And then you also have your USP, your unique sales proposition. And I see this a lot, especially in personal injury, where firms, for quite obvious reasons, will widely advertise a free consultation or case review, and also a no-win, no-fee arrangement, which is obviously a massive benefit to a potential client because they don't have to worry about paying anything up front. But if you are working on contingency, it's challenging to position that as the sole reason that a potential client should choose you when all the other firms are offering that same fee arrangement. So bearing in mind all of these challenges, what can we do about them? So now we're going to look at a successful campaign and some of the ways that we combated these challenges. So I first want to give you just a little bit of background so that you can see what we were working with and where the business was at when we first started working with this firm. So the results that I'm going to show you are for a personal injury law firm in the US. Our client has 2 offices across Texas. And it's worth mentioning that before they came to Exposure Ninja, they had worked with 7 SEO agencies to varying degrees of success. So some just couldn't get results. Others started off strong, but then very rapidly dropped off the radar. And even in terms of their communication, where our client really had no idea what was being done, or even if any work was being done. And so this is one of the reasons that it's been so rewarding having such a long-term relationship with this attorney, because we've had to work really hard to build that trust and demonstrate that we do care and we do know what we're doing. So if you've ever been in a similar position where you've been burnt by agencies in the past who aren't really reporting on the right metrics and getting you the results that matter, more people through the door, more people ringing up, more clients who are pre-qualified before they even get in touch with you, then know that you're certainly not alone, but there are good agencies and partners out there. So when this firm first came to us, they were getting decent traffic to their website, and I suspect that previous agencies had been painting this as a good thing and kind of saying, look at all this additional traffic that we've got coming to the website. But the problem is that hardly any of that traffic was qualified and converting, and those that were getting in touch were inquiring about other services, not personal injury, which is what our client wanted to see more of. And so our first step after establishing where we were and what we were working with was to set our goals and give us a target to aim towards. So in 2022, you can see that our target was 287 leads, and we classified a lead as a form submission or a phone call via the website, where organic was the source of that traffic, because this is an SEO campaign and our main focus is driving qualified clients via that channel. By the end of 2022, we'd achieved 367 organic leads, so we blew past our target. Then, for 2023, we significantly upped our goal, and there are a couple of elements at play here. Now, we like to set ourselves ambitious targets, we stretch ourselves, but we are realistic. And ambition aside, this is still a massive jump. And if we can achieve such a big jump in 2023, it does beg the question, well, why couldn't we have achieved that growth in 2022? Even though 2022, by all accounts, was still quite impressive and above target. And that's because we introduced another dimension in the form of local SEO and ranking in the map pack. So while we had another opportunity to boost conversions from organic search, we did make sure that our goal setting reflected that. And you can see here that organic leads increased by 728% year on year, and we achieved almost 3,000 leads against our goal of just over 2,000. And this is how we did it. So the success of this campaign can really be boiled down to 4 parts. The first was to dominate organic search for informational terms that serve to educate and build trust and push potential clients from those informational pages to our core service pages. We also wanted to secure top organic positioning for commercial terms, so these keywords are a combination of practice area and location. We also invested heavily into local SEO to secure top positioning in the map pack. And there are a couple of reasons for splitting our focus between the traditional organic results and the map pack. The first is that the map pack doesn't always appear even for local searches. So we didn't want to neglect organic search entirely because potential clients are likely still searching for those terms where the map pack isn't appearing. We've also seen that the placement of the map pack can change. So while we might rank in position 1 or 2 in the map pack, if Google decides to place the map pack halfway down the page, we're not benefiting then from that above the fold positioning where our client's website is the first thing that users see after doing a search. The other reason for splitting our focus is that we wanted to be able to rank well for both, so that for those searches where the map pack is showing in the search results, whether it's at the top or in the middle or even towards the bottom, we're still ranking on page 1 in the organic search results, and then we benefit from that double exposure. And this is something that we've consistently seen and still see today for a lot of searches, where we are the only firm that is ranking both in the map pack and on page 1 in the organic results. We see other firms performing really well in the organic results, but they're nowhere to be found in the map pack, and vice versa. So we might be position 1 or position 2 in the map pack, and then the other firms that are ranking in that map pack aren't on page 1 in the organic results. So we benefit from being featured twice. So optimising for local SEO was a big opportunity we identified, because even though that we saw firms were ranking in the map pack, we noticed that their Google business profiles, which is what the map pack shows, weren't particularly well optimised. So we developed our own process of optimisation and achieved some fantastic results. It's something that we've refined and iterated on, and also rolled out onto other campaigns for clients with a physical presence, including law firms. And we've seen that it works very well for gaining those coveted positions in the map pack. Third, we weren't afraid to get creative. We built some beautiful content assets that have performed really well in search and, more importantly, also drive conversions. And finally, we've put the time in to learn as much as we possibly can about the industry. So the main reason that I'm the person hosting this masterclass today is because I absolutely love the law. I did it at school. I loved it. Started working on law firm clients, and it's just sort of the area that I fell into, and I love it. And of course, I'm never going to know all of the case law or the precedent on a certain issue. But most of the time, all a website user needs, the potential client that you want to convert, is the information that's relevant to them explained in a way that's easy to understand. And I think that is something that we excel at. But I do also think it's much easier for our clients when we can have these conversations about legal terms and laws and exceptions, and even just having an understanding of the actual process and what goes on behind the scenes, because then it means that our clients can focus on doing what they do best instead of making comments on a blog post or on a piece of website copy because a writer who's been assigned to their campaign, for example, they might not understand how punitive damages work or when they apply. And that just adds a bottleneck to the entire approval process, and just makes it a lot harder to get content onto the website that could perform really well and get more leads. And I also think that when you have people working on your website, on your marketing, on your business really, who genuinely enjoy the work, I think the enthusiasm shows, and it also makes us more invested in your success because we want to see you do well. So before we get into the how-to, I want to actually show you what some of these results look like. So on the left here, we have a screenshot of some organic rankings. And you'll notice there are a mix of informational terms, so keywords like insurance surveillance tactics, dysarthria head injury, negligence per se, commercial terms such as dump truck accident attorney. And then we have terms that skew toward the informational, such as personal injury journal and car accident settlement calculator, but they lend themselves nicely to driving conversions, because somebody searching for a personal injury settlement calculator has likely been injured, is wondering whether they might be able to recover compensation, and is actually at the point where they're exploring how much they might be able to recover. And of course, these things are dependent on all of the factors that I touched on at the beginning of this masterclass, and that is why we encourage these people to get in touch. On the right here is a screenshot of the page ranking for personal injury journal, and we created this beautiful downloadable that explains how to use the journal and why it's beneficial. We provide examples of what a good pain diary should include, and then there's plenty of space where people can actually fill in their own information. You can see here we have some more commercial keywords, and this is a month-on-month comparison. So you can see that we were already performing pretty well for a lot of these terms, but we've also claimed some additional position 1 rankings here. These are some of the calculator keywords we're ranking in position 1 for, and this is an asset that drives conversions. And this is a snippet of what the calculator looks like. So users can enter their economic damages, so their medical expenses, wages, things like that, and then answer just a couple of questions, and it feeds back a ballpark figure. And this is based on the multiplier method of calculating non-economic damages. Now, of course, it would look different based on a per diem model, and it doesn't factor in things like comparative negligence or punitive damages, and obviously punitive damages won't apply in 95% of cases. But still, this calculator meets the demand for those people who are searching for tools like this, and it serves the purpose of encouraging those people to get in touch to see if they have a claim. And finally, this is a screenshot from Google Analytics, which allows us to track exactly how much traffic is coming to a website, how users are interacting with the website, what pages they're visiting, how many conversions are taking place. And this is looking at a 6-month period. I selected February as the start date because our goals for this campaign our goals in general run from month 1 of a campaign, and it fell in February in this case. So even just looking year on year, we can see some of the growth here and how a lot of these pages aren't just commercial, they are informational too. So we have the personal injury settlement calculator. We have this blog post which has been a great performer for us on whether a person can claim when a driver isn't explicitly named on an insurance policy. So it's answering these specific questions regarding scenarios that do happen, because it's not necessarily always a straightforward case of this person has insurance, they crashed into me, they were negligent, completely their fault, where's my compensation? So hopefully that provided you with some helpful context and shown you what's possible when you invest into digital marketing, but you're probably wondering how you can actually do it for yourself. So I've outlined several steps. I'm going to walk you through each so that you can begin to implement these for yourself and get more cases for your firm. Now, the main steps that I'm demonstrating in this section are really the foundational concepts, right? They're tried, they're tested. You don't need to reinvent the wheel or do something outrageous or invest a ton of money into designing or coding something for your website or doing a big press stunt that may or may not work. These strategies work. So whatever stage you're in, whether you do a lot of outbound or offline marketing, whether you publish the occasional blog post, or whether you're brand new to SEO and you don't really know the best way to go about it, you'll be able to implement these steps. So the first step is to understand the lay of the land, and this means understanding where you are and what you're working with. And then from there, we can begin to define our strategy. So some of the questions that you might want to consider are: what terms are you ranking for? Where are you ranking? Are you ranking at the top of page 1? In which case, assuming the terms you're ranking for are relevant and driving qualified traffic, you might want to focus on fortifying your position. Or maybe you're hovering around the top of page 2 and a big push to get you onto page 1 will help you benefit from that lion's share of traffic that tends to visit the website's ranking on page 1. You also want to consider what search features are appearing. So is there a featured snippet that you could claim? Is there a map pack if it's a local search? You also want to get a feel for who your competitors are and where they're ranking. And you also want to pay attention to what content Google's serving for a particular search. So right now we're not making any decisions about what to do with that information, but understanding this helps you gauge the intent behind the search. So what information people are looking for when they do these searches. So just to give you an example, one type of search may seem more informational in nature, but when you actually search for it, most of the links on page 1 are pointing to commercial pages, and this can happen the other way around too. So if you're a divorce lawyer, you might consider targeting the keyword hire divorce lawyer, thinking that if someone searches that, they're looking to hire a divorce lawyer, and it's easy to see why. But if I do a search for this, at least in my location, and these types of searches will change based on where you or a potential client is searching from, you'll see we do have some commercial pages ranking here, but the majority are more informational. They're pointing to blog posts about how much a divorce lawyer costs and what questions you should ask, when you should hire a lawyer, the benefits. So if you want to rank organically for this term, you'll have a much stronger chance if you align your content with what Google's already serving. Then, based on what you're ranking for, you can then ask if you're ranking for or targeting the right terms. And if the answer is no, you can begin to investigate why that might be the case. So it might be that you're simply not targeting the keywords in your content, or it might be that you're not matching the intent that Google has determined. Now, when it comes to finding those insights, you can use various tools. You can use SE ranking, Ahrefs, SEMrush, or you might already have your own tool that you like to use, and that's great. You can also do a simple Google search, although I will add the caveat that it's going to be harder to get an objective view of where you're ranking when potential clients are searching for you, because Google will take into account things like location and search behaviour. So if you're searching from your office and Google displays a map pack for a search that you're decently optimised for, chances are that it's going to show your firm because it's literally the closest one to you. That's not necessarily where potential clients will see you when they're searching from somewhere else. Now, if you have absolutely no idea where you're ranking or where to begin with using these tools or filtering through all the information that you've gathered, then it's quite a nice time for me to invite you to apply for a free website review. So our marketing review is completely free, no obligation, and during your review, one of our marketing specialists will take a look at your website, see where you're ranking, and they'll also record you a video talking you through where you're at and identify some of the low-hanging fruit that you can take advantage of to improve how well your website is performing. You can do that by going to exposure.ninja/review. Okay, so step 2 is all about defining our content strategy. Now, it's definitely going to help if you have an awareness of where you're at, because you likely have content that you can repurpose or optimize. You might also have content that you realise really isn't doing much to move the needle, or might even be attracting the wrong type of traffic. And as you go through this process, you'll likely also see where those opportunities lie, and then you can consciously plug in the gaps. But even if you don't know this information yet, you can still benefit by thinking about what type of content you need on your website and that would most benefit your target audience. So there are four main elements that we need to be aware of when we're developing a content strategy, and that I'm going to cover. So we're going to explore what content users actually need, how to best communicate that information so that we avoid alienating our audience, how much repetition is too much, and we're also going to talk a little bit more about search intent and commercial versus informational content. So first up is considering what content we need. And really the easiest and most useful way of determining this is to make a list of your practice areas and the various services that you might offer, and sort of doing a content audit of your website to identify where there might be any gaps. So if you're a personal injury firm, you likely want to have dedicated pages for motorcycle accidents, car accidents, truck accidents, brain injuries, spinal cord injuries, wrongful death, medical malpractice. If you do criminal defence work, you might want dedicated pages for assault charges, drug crimes, driving under the influence or driving while intoxicated. I mention both because I know that while they're often used interchangeably, there are differences between the two in some states, and so on. And you'll see that there are some other examples here for family law and probate. And you might be a full service firm where your practice areas span multiple areas of law, or you might specialise. But what's important is that you don't try to cover your bases with only a handful of pages when you need to go much deeper. And this is where it's really helpful to look at your competitors, and not necessarily just the competitors that you're aware of or who might be physically down the street from you, but your competitors in the search results who already have that top positioning. So if the top ranking firm for prenup services has a really long page that explains what a prenup is, the different things that you can stipulate in a prenup, what the process is like, how much it'll cost, how soon you can get one, and all you have is a couple of paragraphs stating what a prenup is, along with a call to action to get in touch, chances are that Google's going to determine that you're not providing users with the information they need to make an informed decision. Because ultimately, Google's goal is to provide users with the information they need. And this is especially important to consider for law firms, because Google doesn't want to provide information to users that could be misleading or incorrect or encourage them to make a hasty decision that could negatively impact their life. And this doesn't necessarily mean that every single page you create needs to be super long and detailed. But Google will be looking for those signals that indicate that users can make an informed decision about whether this is the right step for them. So with that in mind, we can start to think about what these pages should include, and this is when you need to be aware of the curse of knowledge. So when you're practicing law each day or you're used to speaking in legalese, it can be easy to fall into the trap of assuming that potential clients know more than they do. Now, in your content, it is important to mention these concepts because they'll improve your chance of ranking. And the reason why is that Google doesn't just look at specific words or phrases to determine if a page is relevant. It looks at the overall context. So it helps to think of each keyword or topic as a single entity related to all of these other entities. So when you have a page about personal injury, Google will look for references of terms that it associates with personal injury. So things like damages, negligence, insurance subrogation. And so you want to use these terms, but you also don't want to forget your audience. And these are terms that might be really important to the legal process and that a potential client will benefit from understanding because they might be seeing references to them as they do their research, but not really understand what they mean. And then if you can explain these terms in a way that makes it as easy as possible for them to understand, not only do you satisfy what search engines are looking for, but you also help to build trust with your audience and establish your firm as one that can help them through the process without using a bunch of legal jargon that might alienate them. So I've included some examples here, and this is not an exhaustive list by any means, but if you work in criminal defence, you might want to mention things like mens rea and actus reus. So we have, the intent versus the act, voir dire or jury selection, which can obviously come up in both criminal and civil proceedings, clear and convincing, or beyond a reasonable doubt, or by a preponderance of the evidence, whatever the burden of proof might be. Conducting depositions and interrogatories, negligence per se, comparative negligence, and so on. And a client might not need to know every single rule and exemption and definition, and you certainly don't have to try to provide all of that. But some of these concepts are important because they're foundational concepts that might determine whether or not a person is qualified to get in touch with you. So if you practice personal injury in North Carolina, for example, you might not want to be getting tons of inquiries from people who've been injured in an accident that they were partly responsible for, because North Carolina adopts contributory negligence laws that bar a person from recovering compensation if they are even 1% liable for their accident. So if you can explain these concepts, then someone who might have gotten in touch thinking that they're entitled to a massive recovery might disqualify themselves. And that can actually be a really good thing, because it means that you and your team are spending time on the right cases, not disqualifying cases that get in touch thinking that they have a claim when they don't. Now, you also don't want to be afraid of repeating yourself. So every page on your website should have a single purpose and a specific audience. So if you have a page about truck accident claims, your audience is likely people who've been hurt in a truck accident. This person isn't necessarily going to be visiting a page about medical malpractice. So you want to include all the information that a visitor needs to understand the process, what you can do for them, and what the next step is. And this might mean talking about the same general concepts on multiple pages. So concepts like damages, defining what negligence is, talking about the statute of limitations, explaining why accident victims shouldn't be talking to insurance adjusters, what documents these people should be holding on to, and so on. And it's okay if this information is on multiple pages when it's relevant. So you don't want to be copying and pasting information from one page to another, but you should aim to make sure that each singular page has everything that the visitor needs to take that next step, because you want to reduce friction as much as possible and lay out all the information so that the user has identified that you can help them with their need and that they've built up a sufficient amount of trust in you to inquire. What you don't want to be doing is sending them all over your website from this page to this blog to this other blog and then back to this other page, and then it becomes a bit of a wild goose chase trying to find a specific piece of information, because then they're just far more likely to just give up and go somewhere where they can find all of that information in one place. And here we have a couple of examples of what this can look like. So this screenshot is from a premises liability page where we explained some of the damages people might be entitled to in a slip and fall claim. In this screenshot from a car accident claims page, we have similar information here. Now, it's formatted in a slightly different way, so it's in paragraphs rather than splitting different medical expenses into their own points, but it's essentially the same kind of information here because potential clients are going to want to know what they're entitled to after an accident. So now we get into informational versus commercial content. And the most important takeaway here is that your commercial pages aren't the only places that you can get qualified leads from. So commercial pages are those pages that are specifically designed to facilitate conversions, but it doesn't mean that you should neglect informational content, because you can leverage that content to drive conversions. And that's because informational keywords, not always, but as a general rule, tend to be less competitive and are easier to rank for. So similarly, on your informational pages, you want to reduce resistance as much as possible and give users the opportunities to convert. So the screenshot on the right shows you a blog page format where we have this clear contact form that doesn't hinder the reading experience, but it catches the eye and stands out. Because, for example, a person might be reading a blog post that goes into detail about the burden of proof and what criteria they need to satisfy to recover compensation. And that reassurance in that blog post might be all that that person needs to think that they have a case and to get in touch for confirmation. So you want to give them the opportunity to do that. Here's another example of a call to action mid-blog post that encourages people to get in touch for a free case review. And clicking on that button opens up a pop-up form that users can fill in. And this is something we implemented because we realised our blogs were performing really well in the search results, ranking in page 1 for informational keywords. So we were getting this significant amount of traffic, but it had a poor conversion rate. And while we'd always expect a lower conversion rate on informational pages because the intent is different, we still wanted to see if we could boost conversions. And we realised that the page wasn't really set up to encourage that. So we made several changes to add these elements, and we did see conversions from blogs increase as a result. So now we're able to much better leverage that additional traffic we have coming to the website. Now we also want to consider what topics are most relevant and will best facilitate conversions. And a really good gauge for determining this is asking what questions a potential client might have. And you can also tap into your own knowledge here of what kind of questions your clients ask when they first speak to you. So just to give you some examples, a person in a car accident might wonder if they can claim if a driver doesn't have insurance. And here you can talk about some of the challenges that come with that, because if a driver doesn't have insurance, you might be in the position where you have to consider whether the driver has the resources to pay an award if the case goes to trial, or whether there might be another party liable for the accident who does have insurance. Another question might come in the form of, can I claim if I was hurt in a crash and I didn't have a licence, or I was uninsured, or I was disqualified from driving, because these people shouldn't have been on the road really to begin with. And so these are questions that people might have, and it doesn't necessarily bar them from recovering compensation if comparative negligence applies and another party was grossly negligent. But the majority of content that you'll tend to see online is sort of more a straightforward case of a person crashed into me, can I claim? And it doesn't really explore those nuances. And of course, it's impossible to answer the question in as much depth as you need to, because each case is unique. But if a person has that particular question, they're far more likely to trust the firm that can at least acknowledge that and provide some insight into what their position might be. So what type of content might not be useful? So I've seen blog posts like, what should I wear to court? And these posts might drive traffic, but chances are that if someone is searching for this, they might already have an attorney and their trial's approaching. So that blog is unlikely to be a big conversion driver. We also work with a firm based in the UK that does property law, and we did an audit of all their content to determine what we were working with and how they were currently performing. And we found that one of their largest traffic drivers was a blog post about architecture. But because it wasn't attracting the right people, it wasn't driving conversions. And of course, that was also skewing their overall conversion rate, the percentage of website visitors who were taking the actions that you want them to take. So you also always want to consider, who is my audience for this blog post, and am I going to reach the right people with this? So the third strategy that we're covering today is optimizing your Google business profile, and this can really help you rank in the map pack for local searches. So there are several components of a Google business profile, and some of the factors that influence your local ranking include your reviews, both the quantity of reviews and your overall rating, the services listed on your profile, your business profile description, which is where you want to explain what your firm does and how you help people, and also how regularly your profile is updated. Now, getting reviews is one of the best things that you can do to boost your ranking, and replying to them is also a great tactic that shows you're engaging with clients and demonstrates that you're monitoring your profile. It can also give potential clients an insight into what it might be like to work with you. So the screenshot on the right here shows an example of a review and the response underneath. The screenshot below shows an example of the services section, and you can select your practice areas, and you can also write a short snippet of copy underneath here where you want to explain what it is. Try to include a keyword here if possible. And it's also helpful to include a benefit or handle an objection or reduce risk here. So here we have free case review and no fees until we win. And I know that goes back to the USP conversation where, these benefits aren't necessarily groundbreaking things that make this firm stand out from all of the others. We do have other USPs like that across the website. For example, this attorney was a former chiropractor, he's a veteran, and he proudly serves veterans and their families. So those are featured elsewhere on the website, but in this service description, which has a character limit, we're still sort of handling that risk, right? We're reducing that risk by saying, no fees until we win, you've got nothing to lose, that kind of thing. Now, you'll also see that there are several sections of a Google business profile. So in addition to services, we have reviews, updates and photos, and there's also an overview, which is the first thing that users will see, and it shows your review rating and some of your recent reviews. It shows your profile description, information about your office itself, like if there's free parking or whether people need to request an appointment, if there are toilet facilities on site or wheelchair access, and it will also show your most recent updates. And on the right here is an example of what updates can look like. So posting updates is one of the best ways that you can keep your profile updated. And these might be updates about your practice, such as if you open a new office or you're attending an event, if you've been shortlisted for or won an award, or you're welcoming a new lawyer to the firm or promoted a partner. You can also use it to post website updates, such as when you publish a blog post. So in this example, we have a blog post talking about whether people should accept the first offer from an insurer. And in these blog post updates, we want to walk the line between providing value and giving away all the information, because we ultimately want to encourage people to click through to the website. Okay, so hopefully now you have an idea of some of the steps that you can take to optimize your website, leverage your existing content, and also brainstorm new content to increase the leads that you're getting via your website. But there are a few mistakes or potential missteps to be aware of as you go through this process. So the first mistake to avoid is inconsistency. And I completely get it that as a firm it can be challenging to try to juggle so many plates at a time, whether you're a lawyer trying to prioritise client work in addition to wearing multiple different hats, or maybe you're a marketing manager managing social media and SEO, maybe doing PPC and doing press and media and organising offline events. So it's really easy for one thing to fall to the bottom of the priority list. But small, consistent action is better than doing a lot all in one go and adopting a sort of set and forget approach. Because especially with SEO, you can do a bunch of things and it can have a positive result and you might see some gains, but without keeping on top of it, it's easy to lose the results of all that hard work because competing firms have taken the little and often approach. The benefit of consistent action is that it also gives you a better measure of what's working and what's actually moving the needle. This is something that Jess covered in our last webinar on testing and conversion rate optimization, which I'd encourage you to check out if you want more information about how to run a test and what things you can consider experimenting with in your marketing. And basically the main point is that if you make a bunch of changes all at once and you benefit from them, that's great, but it's also much harder to identify whether it was the combination of all those things together that worked, or whether it was a few specific factors that you could actually spend the bulk of your time on and get better results from with less wasted effort trying all of these other things that aren't really moving the needle. You can even experiment with splitting your focus over time. So for a couple of months, you might focus exclusively on a specific practice area or location. And then you can monitor how that goes and determine if it's something worth doubling down on, or whether you want to just keep it ticking over, or whether you would benefit from refocusing entirely. The second mistake to avoid is putting all of your stock into keyword rankings. And this may sound like a bit of a contradiction when much of this masterclass has been focused on organic search and ranking performance. But it's easy to get caught in the trap of constantly monitoring rankings and then obsessing over or panicking over a drop. And the reality is that the search engine results are changing all the time, and they change rapidly, regardless of whether Google's updated its algorithm. There are a lot of factors influencing the search results, and Google's constantly experimenting with the format and the placement, and we've especially seen that recently with the introduction of AI overviews, where they will appear for a search one day and then the next they're completely gone. Sometimes the map pack will disappear or move further down the page, and these things are really impossible to predict. So fluctuations are normal, and it's not always a cause for concern. The best thing that you can do is just to keep the long-term goal in mind. So monitor your performance, consider comparing week on week or month on month, keep iterating, just keep producing quality content. You want to monitor the competition, prioritise the user, and ultimately trust that it will pay off, because in our experience it usually does. Otherwise, you're just constantly one step behind, trying to adapt to something that is going to change from one day to the next. And with the user experience in mind, our last mistake to avoid is ignoring the mobile experience. We found, especially with our law firm clients, that the majority of users will do a search on their phone. You can also check that inside Google Analytics to see exactly where your traffic is coming from. And so you want to make sure that you're delivering a good user experience, both in terms of the content itself and making sure that it's easily readable, but also in terms of the design of your site and how it renders on mobile. I make this mistake personally where, because I use a desktop all the time, it's really easy to just focus only on desktop and neglect the mobile aspect of things. But really, a lot of potential clients are doing that search from mobile. So it's an opportunity really that can pay dividends if you focus on it. And again, the recurring theme here is that you don't need to do anything groundbreaking. You just need to offer an easy experience for the user. So here you can see that the text is a larger size, so it's not all small and cramped together. You can see the review rating here, it's clear and users can swipe through recent reviews. We have this benefits bar at the top and the headings are clear and stand out for people scanning the content. If we look at these, now these are more from a design perspective. I'm not going to call out these firms in particular, but these are all real examples that I found in the wild, so to speak. So on the left here, we have this yellow on white text that's really hard to read. In the second example, we have some paragraph spacing issues where the heading is all cramped together. Then we have a large block of white space that you have to scroll past before you can even see the rest of the content. And then in this final example, half of the text is actually cut off and users can't even scroll to the right or left to read it. And these are things that are all actually really easy to fix. But if you're not aware of them, they can be harming your conversion rate because visitors are unlikely to stick around when they can't access the information that they need to. So it's always worth just checking your firm's website on mobile. So try to put yourself in a potential client's shoes and go through that user journey. Click on some practice area pages and see if there are calls to action that easily stand out and make it clear what the next step is. Read some blogs and see if the content renders correctly, and make a note of any sticking points because these little fixes can make a big difference to the number of qualified leads that you have getting in touch. Okay, and finally I'm just going to recap. So the most important steps are to first get your bearings because you can only determine what you need to do next if you understand where you are first. Don't be afraid of using legal terms because they can help, but make sure that you break them down for potential clients to understand. You also want to anticipate the questions that potential clients have and answer them up front. And bonus points if they're questions that your competitors aren't really going into huge detail about, or they're kind of glossing over with generalizations. And as I said, of course you won't be able to answer these questions perfectly, accounting for all possible scenarios because every case is unique, but you can at least acknowledge that these issues exist. Always put your user first in both your content and your website design and reduce resistance as much as possible. So you can and certainly should point to additional resources and helpful information on your website, but you want to make it as easy as possible for people to go from A to B. And finally, you want to determine what's good for you. So you absolutely want to monitor what the competition's doing, and it's an important part of the process. But what one firm can do isn't necessarily what you can. You don't know whether they've got a marketing budget 10 times your size, or whether they're prioritising one location when you have 3 or 4 different offices. And so while there are always going to be best practices, you have to identify what works for you and what you can do consistently. Because there's no point if you invest a bunch of time and then burn out. And this particularly extends to your goals as well. Whether you're defining goals yourself or you're partnering with an agency or a marketing specialist, you want to consider what success looks like for you. What are your expectations from your marketing efforts? Because it's all well and good following this strategy to rank in the top spot for slip and fall lawyer. But if you want to get more car accident cases, then there's a mismatch there. Likewise, if you practice in multiple areas and you want more divorce cases and your marketing partner is reporting that it's been a fantastic quarter because they've secured tons of probate cases, then that's all well and good, but you might not have the capacity to take those on. You might have a team of lawyers who specialise in divorce and custody cases, effectively twiddling their thumbs because there aren't enough cases to go around. And that could be a communication issue because someone's not listening, or expectations haven't been set effectively enough, or it could be that the goals weren't well defined enough to begin with. And that specificity is crucial. So knowing exactly what you want to get out of your marketing efforts before mapping out what you need to do, knowing what types of cases you want and how many and where those are going to come from is going to make the whole process a lot smoother and more successful from the get-go. And if you would like our help with that, then we are always here to have a conversation. And there are a couple of ways that you can find out more about how we can potentially help you. So you can get a free copy of our law marketing playbook, and this breaks down some more of our most successful legal campaigns and also offers some additional tips and how-tos to supplement what we've covered here today. You can get that by going to exposure.ninja/law. And of course, you're also more than welcome to apply for a free marketing review at exposure.ninja/review, where we can help you identify what's achievable and the best way to get you there. And if you decide to implement these things yourself, then I genuinely hope that this has been useful and given you some new ideas for some of the steps that you can take and the things that you can implement to increase the number of cases coming through from your website. If you have any questions at all, then please feel free to leave them in the comments below, and I will check back and will do my best to advise on those. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope that you got a lot of value out of it. Thank you.